Hello there and welcome to this American Civil War epic battle report. Today I'm playing scenario 2 from the booklet you get with the starter set from Warlord Games, and it's the Battle of Wilson's Creek. And this was fought in the state of Missouri in August 1861. And basically the scenario is the Union forces are camped near the Confederates at Wilson's Creek, and they've got a very straightforward plan. They're going to attack the Confederates at dawn. But they're going to attack from the front, but also have a detached brigade that comes onto the rear to their flank. So quite unique for the scenario, particularly because the Confederates have got the same plan. So they've also got a detached brigade that will come in to attack the flank and rear of the Union forces. So the table today, this is a 4x4 mat. Wilson's Creek runs down this edge here. You can cross Wilson's Creek, but it takes a full move in one order. And this is Skeggs Branch that runs down the middle, and again you can cross Skeggs Branch, but it's half movement. All of the woods, it's a lightly wooded area, but those trees are just there for a bit of decoration. I won't be using them to affect the scenario. I'll move them around as I need to. In terms of deployment, the Union forces are deploying on that side of Skeggs Branch. Confederates are deploying along here. From turn 2 onwards, the Union player can try and bring on its detached brigade at this border edge here behind the Confederate lines, and from turn 4 onwards the Confederates can do the same with their detached brigade from that corner there. So it'll be quite an interesting scenario to play. Looking forward to this one. Quite a few brigades involved in this battle, so we'll get on to the forces and deployment. So forces are now deployed. So on this side we've got the Union, which is commanded by Brigadier General Nathaniel Lyon. He's at the back there, and that's his left flank, which is his 3rd Brigade. So that's 3 infantry regiments there. In his centre he's got his 2nd Brigade, which is 2 infantry regiments and a battery of 4 guns that's represented by those 2 stands. And then on his right flank he's got those 2 infantry regiments and a battery of 6 guns, which is represented by the 3 stands. For the flanking attack, he's got his 4th Brigade, which is 2 infantry regiments, a tiny regiment of cavalry, and a 6-gun howitzer battery. So the Confederates do outnumber the Union today. They've got 5 brigades on the field, commanded by Brigadier General Ben McCulloch, who's down here in the centre. So on his left, you've got the 1st Brigade, 2 regiments there, his 2nd Brigade here with a 4-gun battery. They're not facing the wrong way, they're basically limbered at the moment. And then his centre, you've got his 4th Brigade in the centre here, which is 2 regiments and a 4-gun battery of artillery. And then on his right flank he's got a slightly larger 3rd Brigade, which is 3 regiments of infantry and a 4-gun battery there. Also one of those regiments is in skirmish order, so they will be classed as skirmishers, and I'm classing them as light infantry for the purposes of the game. Then he's got his 5th Brigade here at the back in reserve as well, 2 regiments of infantry. And for his flanking attack we've got a cavalry brigade. So we're going to have one of those mounted and one come on dismounted as dismounted cavalry, so they're again classed as skirmishers for the purpose of the game. All the commanders on the field, including the 2 generals, are command rating of 8. Keeps things nice and simple. And in terms of victory conditions, it's basically as set out in the Black Powder rules. So you've got to break each other's armies. So for the Union, they need to break at least 3 of these brigades, and for the Confederates, they need to break at least 2 of these brigades of the 4. So the Confederates do have an advantage in this game. They've got more numbers and they've got to break less. So the Union have really got to work hard to get something out of this battle. And if you know the history of the Battle of Wilson's Creek, it didn't end well for the Union on the day. So let's see how this one plays out. So turn 1 coming up, and that's going to be for the Union. Okay, so that's the end of turn 1 movement for the Union. As you can see, the right flank completely stalled. Both brigade commanders failed to get any orders off, so they're just stuck there for the time being. However, the left flank, this commander managed to get his whole brigade up to the edge of Skeggs Branch. So in ACW, you can't shoot if you've moved more than once, so they're not shooting in the next phase, but obviously the Union do need to get on with it, and they're in a good position for the next turns. In terms of shooting, although these didn't move, the artillery is in range just, so there will be a shooting phase which I'll come back to. So I'm starting off with this 4-gun battery here on the left. They've got a couple of targets they can go for. They're either for these skirmishers here or for this deployed artillery. Both targets are not clear, so skirmishers, deployed artillery aren't clear targets. So I'm getting -1 to my shooting. Also I'm over half range, so I'm also getting -1 for that. So I'm hitting on a 6 and only get 1 dice at this range as well. So 1 dice hitting on a 6. No. Okay, let's move over to this other battery. So this 6-gun battery is going to fire across at this infantry regiment here. Again, they're over half range, so they're going to be -1 to hit, and also they're going to get 1 dice, so it's going to be 5s to hit, which they don't. So that's the end of shooting. Over to Confederate Turn 1 movement. So that's the end of a very successful Turn 1 movement phase for the Confederates. Major advances all across the line, clearly stirred on by General McCulloch, particularly on the left flank here. The 1st Brigade got across Skeggs Branch and just outside of close range with the Union right, and supported by the 2nd Brigade. In the centre, the 4th Brigade moved up as well, and on this flank the 3rd Brigade checked the advance of the Union here. The only brigade not to move was the 5th, but to be fair, they are in reserve, so they're just covering the flanks here. Okay, so over to Confederate Turn 1 shooting. Okay, so starting with this 4-gun battery here, can be shooting across this regiment. Now they can shoot through the gap, but because they can't see more than half of the regiment, they are not a clear target. So, but they are in medium range, so we're getting 2 dice. So normally hitting on 4s, but not a clear target, -1. So 2 dice hitting on 5s. That's good. So a 6 is a disorder. So that's 1 hit, and they are disordered. So put that marker there. And because they're at medium range, it's -2 to the morale saves. So a 4 becomes a 6, which they don't make. So it's 1 casualty on that regiment there. So a good start for the Confederate shooting. And over to this battery here in the middle, they're shooting across at that front regiment there. Again, they're over half range, so we're only getting 1 dice, and again -1 to hit, so it's 5s. Nothing there. So a fairly tame start to the shooting for both sides. Just 1 casualty and a bit of disorder here. So over to Union Turn 2. So that's the end of Turn 2 movement for the Union, and they're doing what they have to do, which is be aggressive. So this commander here kept his the Zouaves there stationary, but swung his battery of cannon round to get into close range of that front rank there. So that bold move from the Confederates could backfire shortly. Centre, the 2nd Brigade moved up, and then on this flank, the 3rd Brigade, this left unit here, regiment, moved into close range, and also the front unit there did a passage of lines test, which is a ACW specific rule, to pass through that unit there and get into close range of those skirmishers to get some shooting. But the big news was that the reserve 4th Brigade managed to come on and flank the Confederates on this side. So you got 1 move on, so they can shoot this turn as well. And these are the howitzers and the unit of cavalry as well, swinging up over the hill. Okay, so good turn of movement for the Union, and over to shooting. So starting over here on the left, this regiment here will fire into the unit in front of them. They are in close range, so they're getting +1 to their shooting, so that's 3 shots hitting on 3s. That's excellent shooting there, so 1 disorder and 3 hits. So that's 3 saves of 4 required. Notice that's 2 casualties go through onto that unit. Just put that on there. And also they are disordered. So that's a good start. Over to this unit here, shooting at the skirmishers. Now again, skirmishers aren't clear targets, so it's -1, but they are in close range, that's +1. So basically we're back to 4s. So 3 shots hitting on 4s. Once again, 1 disorder and 1, I'll just put that on there, and then 1 save of 4 required, which they do make. So no casualties, but they are disordered. Okay, so I'll move over to the right. Starting over here with this 4-gun battery. They are now in medium range of that skirmisher unit. So although they can shoot at the artillery, they're only getting 1 dice, but they are getting 2 dice at that skirmisher unit there. So they're still not clear target, so it's -1. But being in medium range, we're getting 2 dice and no other modifiers. So it's 2 dice hitting on 5s. And that's a hit. Now because I'm in medium range, it's -2 to the saving throw for the morale save. So a 4 becomes a 6, which they don't make. So that is 1 casualty on that skirmisher unit, who are also disordered. Let's put that on there. In the centre here, we've got this regiment's going to shoot through at that regiment there, so that's just 3 dice, and that's hitting on 4s. Just the 1 hit, and a 4 to save. No, and so that's a casualty. Just put that on there. And then over here, we'll do the Zouaves first. So they're going to shoot through at that unit there. Now again, they're not in close range, so it's still hitting on 4s, 3 shots. 1 and a disorder, a save of 4 required, which they do make, but they are now disordered. And because this is a 6-gun battery, they do get 5 shots. So this could be bad news for that regiment there, and they are in close range as well. So this is 5 shots hitting on 3s. That's a terrible, terrible roll. So the Confederates have got away there. They've got away with it. So it's just 1 hit. It's a save of 6 required, which they don't make. So they do get a casualty, but that is a big sigh of relief for that unit there. Okay, so we'll move over to the flanking unit. So we'll start with this front unit here, firing into the rear regiment there. They are in range, so they're getting 3 shots, and that's hitting on 4s. That is 2 hits and a disorder. So 2 saves of 4 required. No, so that is a disorder and 2 casualties. And then the howitzers. Now it's a 6-gun battery again. Howitzers get 2 shots at every range though, so slightly different to the smoothbore equivalent. So they're getting 2 shots, but they are over half range because their range is 36, and that's hitting on 5s. So no hits there. And the cavalry, they do have pistols and 1 shot, but it's only 6 centimetre range, so they're not doing anything this turn. Okay, so that's the end of shooting. A decent round of shooting for the Union. They've got their 4th Brigade on as well, already inflicting some casualties, some disorder across the Confederate lines, and over here this unit here is also in a spot of bother. But over to Confederates turn 2. So that's the end of turn 2 movement for the Confederates. A lot happened. So firstly, the 2nd Brigade that was over here managed to swing itself round and unlimber its artillery as well to face the threat of this 4th Brigade that's come on to the flank. This brigade clearly rattled. The commander blundered and sent this unit just shuffled to the side, clearly in confusion. In terms of up here, this unit did a disorderly retreat, so I've just put a 2nd disorder marker on them to remind me that they're disordered for the next turn as well. But he did manage to swing his guns round into close range, so they're going to hopefully put some damage onto that unit. Over this side, again another disorderly retreat off the line just to try and recover, so again another disorder marker there. But the other unit in that brigade managed to charge in to the Zouave unit there. Now in ACW, charging is slightly different. You can't charge on initiative. You have to be ordered in, and that reflects some of the combat at the time where units were reluctant to charge at formed infantry. But he rolled a 6, so that was enough because there's a +2 modifier on your roll. So he managed to get that unit into hand-to-hand combat, albeit they took a couple of casualties on closing fire. Okay, so lots of movement. Over to shooting turn 2. So starting on this right flank here, although this unit retreated, it can still shoot, albeit it's getting a -1 to hit because of it being disordered. So that's 3 shots hitting on 5s. That's still 2 hits though, and 2 saves of 4 required. No, so actually that's 2 casualties onto that unit. That's a good start, because the artillery are next. Now they are in close range. They're a 4-gun battery, so they're getting 3 shots, and they're in close range, so that's 3 shots, and they're hitting on 3s. So that's 2 hits, and also a disorder. And again, 2 saves of 6 required. So this could be bad. No, so that is another 2 casualties. So they are now disordered. They are on 4 casualties. They've got a stamina of 3, so they're now also shaken. So we've got our first shaken unit, and they will be testing for morale because they're 1 over their stamina. Okay, moving over to the centre here. The 4th, 3rd and 5th Brigades for the Confederates are all armed with smoothbore muskets. So at close range they do actually get an extra dice. And that reflects the fact it was quicker or faster to fire them than the rifle muskets. So this unit here is getting 3 dice, so that becomes 4 dice for shooting. Now they are in close range, so that's +1, but they are also disordered, so that's -1. So that means they are hitting on 4s. Just the 1 hit, and a save of 4 required, which they make. So no casualties there, and they're moving over to the left. So first off, the artillery there are going to shoot across into that front rank there. So they are in medium range, so they're getting 2 dice, and they're hitting on a 4. So that's 1 hit, and it's a save of 6 because they're in medium range, which they don't make. So that is 1 casualty onto that unit there. And then this front regiment here will also fire into them. So that's 3 shots, and that's hitting on 4s. That's 2 hits and a disorder. 2 saves of 4 required. That's another casualty and a disorder. Over there. And this unit here, although it's disordered again, can fire. And these have got rifled muskets, so they have got a slightly longer range. And measuring from that, they can shoot across to that deployed artillery. So they deployed artillery are not a clear target, and they are disordered. So they are going to be hitting on 6s. But might as well give it a go. 3 shots. Nothing there. Okay, and final shooting over here in a second. So this artillery unit here is going to shoot at the cavalry. They did make 1 move and they unlimbered, but unlimbering is a free move, so that's fine for shooting. They are in medium range, so it's 2 shots hitting on 4s. That's 1 hit, and because they're in medium range it's -2, so that's a 6 to save. Oops, missed. Which they make, that's lucky, so that just shot just whistled past their ears. So that's the end of the shooting. So just got 1 break test to do over here, which I'll do next. So this unit are taking their break test. So they're basically 1 over their stamina limit for casualties, so they get a -1 to their test. They're also disordered, so that's another -1. And also they took casualties from artillery, so that's -1. So that's -3 to their roll. It's 2 dice, let's see what happens. So that's 0. So, okay, so they are broken. Now in normal black powder that would mean they were removed from the table. However, in ACW there's a rule called whipped. So basically firefights were less decisive in the American Civil War, and therefore regiments that had the worst of it would kind of quickly retire. So to reflect that, there's this whipped rule, which basically means they're not taken off the table, but they do retire. They're reduced in stamina, and effectively they count as being broken for the brigade, but they're still on the table. So it's a slightly different rule for American Civil War, which I quite like. It's quite reflective of the combat of the time. Okay, so I'll just do that now, and also take off some of this disorder. So this unit now takes 1 off, but it's still disordered from their retreat. This disorder comes off here. This one comes off at the front here, and then there's 1 off this unit here as well. Okay, so we're going to go. I'll do that retreat over there in a second, and then we're over to turn 3 for the Union. Hold my horses. I forgot about this hand-to-hand combat here on this flank, so the turn's not quite finished yet. So the Confederates charged in, so both units get 6 dice in hand-to-hand combat, but because the Confederates charged in, they get a +1. So they'll be hitting on 3s, and the Union will be hitting on 4s. So we'll do the Confederate first. So that is 3 hits, and the Union hitting on 4s. So that is also 3 hits, that's 3 each. So the Confederates have got 3 saves of 4. So that's 2 casualties for the Confederates, and 3 for the Union save all of theirs. So so the way this would work out is the Union scored 2 because they got 2 casualties on the Confederates, and also they are supported for here and here. So actually that would become a 4. So it's 4-0. So so they won the combat. The Confederates took the 2 casualties, so they're actually shaken as well. So they will be testing, which I'll come back to. Okay, so for the break test, it's just -1 for the excess casualty. There's nothing for being shaken. So it's 2 dice, -1. Need to roll high. They do, they love it. So that's an 11, so they're, although they lost the combat, they're still locked together. So I'll just reduce this back to 3 and move on to Union turn 3. So that's the end of turn 3 movement for the Union. Over on this flank, this whipped unit, because they're whipped, they don't recover from being shaken or disordered, so they're stuck there basically. Over here, he tried to get that front unit to charge into those skirmishers, but failed his command roll, so they were stuck. Over this side, this commander, that unit there, did a passage of lines check and got through the unit there to face them, and also he swung his artillery around a bit further. And then over this side, again, he swung his artillery through the gap there to try and get some shots through onto that disordered brigade there. And obviously these are locked in hand-to-hand combat over here. In terms of the 4th Brigade, managed to get, because they are charging to the rear, there was no command modifiers, so managed to get a charge off into their flank, which is going to be bad news for the Confederates. But then he failed to move anything else, so the rest of the brigade are pretty stuck where they are. So that's the end of the movement. Over to shooting. So starting off over here, this 6-gun battery can fire into that disordered unit there. Because they're 6 guns, if they're at medium range, they get 3 shots. So that's 3 shots hitting on 4s. That's 2 hits and a disorder, but they already are, so that's no different. 2 saves of 6 required. No, so that is another 2 casualties, which puts them onto 3, and that makes them shaken as well. Okay, so this front unit here will fire in there. Again, they're at close range, so they're going to be hitting on 3s, 3 shots. That is 3 hits, 3 saves of 4 required. No. Wow, so that's 3 casualties on them. So that puts them up to 4, and they're also shaken, and they will be testing because they've won over their stamina. Okay, so we'll move over to the left. So this 4-gun battery is going to fire across their counterparts there. They are in medium range, they're getting 2 shots, but they are shooting at a deployed artillery, so they're not a clear target. So that's 2 shots hitting on 5s. But that is 1 hit and a 6 to save. No, so that is 1 casualty on that artillery unit there. And in the centre here, that unit's going to fire into the skirmishers, who again are not a clear target, even at this range, but they are close, so 4s become 3s, becomes back to 4s. 3 shots. But they do get 1 hit and a disorder, 1 save of 4 required, which they do make, but they are disordered. And then finally, this whipped unit can still shoot, which is the difference between that and the normal broken rules for black powder. They are reduced to 2 stands, that's 2 shots. They're shooting at that deployed artillery, and they are disordered. So basically 2 shots hitting on 6, which they do get. So despite being whipped, they've still managed to do some damage. That's a save of 4 required. And they do to get a casualty, so they've managed to get a casualty off onto that artillery. So that is the difference with the whipped rule than normal black player. Okay, so over to the 4th Brigade. So this unit is just in range of that Confederate unit over there, and because they can see more than half the unit, there's no problem shooting at those or any modifiers. So it's 3 shots hitting on 4s. Just the 1 hit and save of 4 required, which they don't make, so that is 1 casualty on them. So that is the end of the shooting phase. We've just got 1 break test to take for this unit in the middle, so I'll do that next. So they're 1 over their stamina. They didn't suffer casualties from artillery, so it's just a -1 to their roll. So a 7 becomes a 6. So actually they will be retiring 1 move. So I'll do that and come back for close combat. Okay, before we start the hand-to-hand, a slight correction there. That unit has moved back there because on a 6, in shooting anyway, you still hold your ground. So they didn't retire. I've just reduced their casualties back to 3 and they're still shaken. Okay, so over to hand-to-hand. So in this combat, I've got a little marker there. It reminds me that the Zouaves won the combat last turn. So they'll be getting +1 to their hits, so 6 dice hitting on 3s. And the Confederates have got 6 dice, but because they're shaken, they are hitting on 5s. So we'll do the Union first, so 6 dice hitting on 3s. And that's not too bad, that's 4 hits. And then the Confederates on 5s. Okay, so a great roll by the Confederates there, so 4 hits as well. So it's even, so we'll do the Union save, so Union 4s. No, so that is 3 casualties for the Union. And it's the same for... No, so that is 4 casualties for the Confederates. So I'll just work all that through. So working this through, the Union scored 4 casualties against the Confederates, who scored 3 casualties against the Union. So Confederates have got no supports, so the Union won that by 1, plus they've got a support, so makes that 2, so they've won the combat. So although they are actually shaken as well, because they've got 3 casualties, the Confederates will be testing because they've lots of combat, and they are +4 to their casualties. So we'll do that straight away. So 2 dice, -4. 6 becomes a 2, so they are broken and they are gone. That's the first measurement broken. So over to this combat here. Now the Union again gets 6 dice, and they charge, they get +1s, 1 3s. And because the Confederates have been charged to their flank, they're getting -1. So they get 6 dice, they're hitting on 5s. So we'll do the Union first. That's good, that's all hits, that's 6 hits for the Union. And then 6 dice on 5s. Not bad though, that is 4 hits for the Confederates, they're fighting hard. So we'll do the saves for the Union first, so 4 saves of 4. So that is 2 casualties on the Union, and then 6 saves of 4 required. Okay, so again 2 casualties on the Confederates. So in terms of working that combat result out, it's basically a draw, because although these are, we've got a unit here, because they're charged to the rear, they can't be supported. So that is a drawn combat. However, 2 casualties onto the Confederates puts them to 4, so they are shaken. So because it's a drawn combat and they're shaken, they will be testing. So I'll come back for that. Okay, so for the break test, they're 1 over their stamina limit, so it's 2 dice -1. So that 7 becomes a 6, and I do believe in hand-to-hand that does mean they are retiring 1 move, so I'll put that through. So a bit of an end of turn 3 for the Union summary, because a lot happened in that turn. So just to confirm, because this unit that broke here is gone, there's only 1 unit left in that brigade who are also shaken, so that brigade is actually broken, which means first blood really for the Union. That's 1 brigade gone, so they'll now have to start retiring off the board. At the end of that hand-to-hand combat, that Union unit did actually follow up and crash into the back of them again, which they can do. They can advance on a retiring unit, so they're back into hand-to-hand combat. So lots of casualties, shaken units, disordered all over the board for the Confederates. So a really good turn for the Union and a brigade broken. So let's go over to turn 3 for the Confederates and see what they can do in reply. So that's the end of turn 3 movement for the Confederates. Over on the left flank here, the remnants of the broken 1st Brigade retreated away from the Union forces there, starting to retire from the battlefield. The 2nd Brigade swung round and trying to close in on this flanking attack from the Union. In the centre, tried to get this. The commander tried to get this unit here to engage and help out that unit, but failed his command role, so they're just stuck there doing nothing. Up in the centre here, the 4th Brigade, the shaken unit retired from, just moved back under initiative, and then the fresh unit moved forward under initiative into close range, and the artillery again swung round just to get some close range shots off there as well, trying to put some pressure on this centre. And over on the right, not a lot of movement at all, just swung the artillery around again, try and get some shots into that unit there. This unit's still disordered, so can't move, and still got the 2 units just facing off in the centre. So over to Confederate turn 3 shooting. So we'll start down this corner here where the 2nd Brigade are facing off against this flanking attack. So this front unit of infantry will fire at the tiny cavalry unit there. So they've got 3 shots hitting on 4s. Just the 1 hit and 1 save of 4, which they make. And then the artillery is in medium range, so they're getting 2 shots and they're hitting on 4s. That is 1 hit, and it's -2 to the save, so that becomes a 6. Note, so that is a casualty. So they are now shaken as well, because they've only got 1 stamina. Okay, so and then we'll move over to the centre. So over in the centre, this forward unit's going to fire across at the Union troops there. Now again, the 4th Brigade has got smoothbore muskets, so again they're in close range, so they're getting an extra dice for that. So that's 4 shots and they're hitting on 3s. That is 4 hits, which is good. So 4 saves of 4 required. Well, they make 3 of those, so just 1 casualty. Not quite what they wanted. And then we've also got the artillery there. We've got 3 shots into them. Yep, and they're on close range as well, so they're on 3s. Well, that's 3 hits and a disorder. 3 saves of 6 required. This could be painful. And it is, so that's 3 casualties. That takes them to 4. So they're going to be testing as well. They are also shaken. Oh no, that's the wrong one, sorry. They are shaken. And they're also disordered. Okay, so moving along the line. So here we have the skirmishers at the front there, going to be firing in at close range. They are disordered though, so normally hitting on 4s, becomes 3s at close range, but back to 4 because of being disordered. Again, they've got the smoothbore muskets, so they're getting the extra dice. So it's 4 shots, hitting on 4s. That's 1 and a disorder, 1 save of 4 required. Notes, that's a casualty and a disorder. So that's a good start. And then the artillery here is going to fire in again. They're at close range, but because of how they're positioned, they're only really getting shots at 1 stand there, so that's going to be not a clear target. So those 3 shots at close range. It's still going to be on 4s. But that is 3 solid hits. 3 6s required. No, so that is another 3 casualties. So they're also shaken. They've got 4 casualties. So that's another unit shaken. So not a bad round of shooting for the Confederates. A couple of shaken and disordered units there now for the Union. So over to this hand-to-hand combat here to finish off. So working this through, they've both got 6 dice again for hand-to-hand. Now the Union, because they re-engaged into combat, they get a +1 bonus for their attacks, so they're going to be hitting on 3s again. And the Confederates, because they're shaken, that's going to be -1, so they're going to be on 5s. So we'll do the Union first. That's 6 dice on 3s. So that is all hits. That's really good. That's 6 hits on the Confederates and 6 rolls of 5. Just the 1, so only 1 hit back. So we'll do the saves. That's 4 saves. So just 1 save for the Union, which they don't make. So they are. That's 1 casualty. We'll do that in a second. There's 1 casualty there, and then 6 saves of 4 for the Confederates. Oh, that's pretty bad. That is 4 casualties on the Confederates there. Let's put that there. So, working this through, clearly the Union have won again. The Confederates are 4 over their stamina level, and these are now shaken as well because they get an extra casualty there. So just put that on there. So these will be testing to see if they break. Okay, so for the break test, they're 4 over their stamina level, so that's 2 dice and -4. So 7 becomes the 3, so they are also broken and gone from the table. So I'll take them off in a minute, but I also remembered I've got some break tests to do here for the Union as well. I keep forgetting to do those, so I'll just whiz around and get those sorted as well. So starting over here, this unit here is 1 over its stamina level. It's also disordered, so that's -1, -1, and we also suffered casualties from artillery, so that's -1 as well. So that's 2 dice at -3. So that is a 2, so they are whipped, so they'll be retiring from the front line there. And over to this unit here as well. They're in the same position. They're 1 over their stamina level. They're disordered and they had artillery casualties, so that's -3 again. Need to roll high. So 8 minus 2 is 5. So they will be retiring 1 move, but they're not going to be whipped. So that's the end of the Confederate turn. Over to turn 4 for the Union. So that's the end of turn 4 movement for the Union, and unfortunately there's been a bit of a disaster. I hadn't picked up, but actually the fact that that unit had been shaken in the last round of combat, shooting, and with their other regiment there whipped, that brigade is actually broken. So there was some triumphant yells from the Confederate lines as the left flank of the Union line retreated away from the battle broken. So that's 1 brigade down for the Union. Suddenly looking a little bit shaky now. This centre, again a whipped unit there. So this commander decided to rally off a casualty there and try and hold his brigade together. He managed to do that successfully. This commander has swung his units up, so these swung round and these moved up. He did try and then rally off one of the casualties there on the Zouaves unit, but unfortunately failed that roll, so they're still shaken. So over on the flank, I'm not a big fan of these tiny units, but basically they are shaken anyway. They're not much use against this big brigade, so they've just decided to just gallop down and see if they can get a couple of shots off at the artillery before they're probably wiped out. He managed to move his guns up a little bit as well, the howitzers, and also he managed to get this regiment up a little bit closer. That's the last regiment in that brigade, so I think the Union commander's trying to break that brigade as well. These guys tried to manoeuvre, but he failed the roll, so they're just stuck there and they're also shaken. So yeah, the Union are trying to keep the pressure on as best they can. So over to shooting turn 4. So starting over here, this battery of 4 guns is actually enfilading that battery there. So basically that means they can re-roll missed shots. They are in medium range, so that's 2 shots. However, they are still firing at a deployed artillery, which is not a clear target, so -1. So it's going to be 2 shots hitting on 5s, but they can re-roll missed shots. So that's 2 misses, so they get to re-roll. But still nothing happened there, so that's a shame. In the centre here, this regiment here is going to fire across at those guys, so it's just 3 shots hitting on 4s. That's much better, that's 3 hits and 3 saves of 4 required. So just the 1 casualty. And then over here, you've got the 6 gun battery there that are in medium range. They're actually getting 3 shots and they're hitting on 4s. Ah, nothing. That's a shame for the Union. They needed that. And this Sparvs unit can get some shots into that regiment as well over there. You measure from the centre of the middle stand there, so they're in range, but because of how they're positioned, they're not going to be a clear target again, so we're going to go with 3 shots, but they're going to be hitting on 5s. But that is 1 hit, so save of 4 required, which they make. So despite all of that firepower, nearly 10 artillery pieces, 2 regiments firing, just the 1 casualty. So we'll go over to the flank area. So we'll start here with this cavalry unit. They're going to shoot into the artillery. They are in close range. They only get 1 shot. They are shaken, so and they are shooting at deployed artillery. So they're getting -1 for shooting at them, -1 for being shaken, but +1 for being close range. So it's 1 shot hitting on a 5. No, didn't expect that. And then over here, this unit here is going to fire into these guys. So it's 3 shots hitting on 4s. Just the 1 hit and 1 save of 4 required, which they make. So it's down to the howitzers really. Now howitzers are good because they can shoot overhead and they don't, so they don't suffer any penalties for that either. They are at long range though, over half range. So they are still getting 2 shots, but they're hitting on 5s. But that is 1 hit and a disorder, and it's -2. So that's a save of 6, which they don't make. So that is actually another casualty and also a disorder. So, and this unit here is just going to fire through into that unit there. So it's going to be, again, 3 shots, but they are shaken, so they'll be going hitting on 5s. Just the 1 hit and 4 required. No. So to be fair, they have caused an additional casualty there, so push on 4. So they will be testing. And as there's no hand-to-hand combat, we'll might as well go into that straight away. So that's 2 dice. Move this over here. So they're just -1 from this roll. Ah dear. So they are whipped. That unit does retire, and so a bit of luck there for the Union at the end of that shooting phase. So I'll move that unit in a second, and we're over to turn 4 for the Confederates. So that's the end of turn 4 movement for the Confederates. And the big news is it's turn 4, and the cavalry brigade reserve that was making its way round to flank the Union have arrived. He rolled really well, the commander. He managed to get his mounted cavalry to crash into the back of that 1st brigade there, so they're in combat, and he managed to get the 2nd regiment on, dismounted and into skirmishing order. So really positive move from the Confederates. Feels like the battle's just about to swing in their favour possibly. Down on the left flank here, these are the units that are retiring. So the front unit there was from the Broken Brigade, and this was one of the whipped units that's falling back. The 2nd Brigade also swung round, so has now got himself in a good position here to start to move across this flanking force from the Union. Centre, not much happened, just a little bit of shuffling round just to get better firing lines. This skirmish unit made it across the brook and in close range to that artillery piece there. And then he did try to bring his other infantry regiments around, this colonel, but unfortunately didn't get any movement, which is a shame because obviously this left flank's now broken from the Union, so he was trying to exploit that space but failed his command rolls. So I think the Confederates are in a good position. This could end the battle on this turn. They just need to break 1 more brigade. Let's see how it goes. Over to shooting. Okay, so we'll start down over here with this 2nd Brigade. I do think this cavalry unit is about to be decimated, but let's see how it goes. I might just move this tree for the purposes of the rolls. So we'll go with the artillery first. So they're at close range, they're hitting on 3s, and they've got 3 shots. Just the one. That's a 6 to save though. No, so they are over their stamina already, so they will be testing. That could have been worse. And then we've got 3 shots coming in from the infantry regiment into them. They are enfilading as well, so they are going to be able to re-roll misses. So they've got 3 shots, again hitting on 3s, re-rolling misses. Just the one and a disorder. That is 3 hits, so 3 saves of 4 required. No, so that's the problem. So that is 5 casualties in total. They're also disordered, so they will be testing, and I've got a feeling they're going to go off the table. Okay, over to this here. Now this unit here, it's in a bit of an awkward position, but I'm going to give them 1 shot onto that unit there from that stand. So it's going to be 1 shot hitting on a 3, because sorry, on a 4, because although they're in close range, they're also disordered. So that's a 4, which they hit, and it's going to be a 4 up to save, which they make. Okay, so we'll go over to the centre. So we'll start off with this infantry unit here, firing across that infantry there. So that's 3 shots, and they're hitting on 4s. That's 2 hits and a disorder, 2 saves, 4 required. Just the one, so that is 1 casualty. So they're already on 1, so that puts 1 to 2, and a disorder. And then we've got the artillery there, they're not in close range, they're still in medium range, so they're getting 2 shots, and again hitting on 4s. Just the 1 hit, and a save of 6 required because it's at medium range. But they do make that, so just the one casualty coming across there, but they are disordered. And then in the centre here again, this skirmisher regiment shooting across the artillery. Now again, because they've got the smoothbore muskets, they're getting an extra dice because they're at close range. Normally hitting on 3s, but because they are firing at deployed artillery, they're not a clear target, so that becomes 4s. So that is 4 shots hitting on 4s. Just looking at the dice. Just the 1 and a disorder, and again 4 to save, which they do make, but they are disordered, which may make a difference later. And then finally I'll just come over to this dismounted cav over here. So this dismounted cav is in range of that artillery there. They're in skirmish order, but they can shoot through to there. So they're getting their 3 shots, but because they're shooting at deployed artillery again, it's -1, so 4s become 5s. That is 2 hits, 2 saves of 4 required. No, so that's 1 casualty on that battery as well. So that's all of the shooting for this turn. I just need to do the brake test over here, then we'll come back for the hand-to-hand combat down here, which could be the decisive part of this game. So this poor cavalry unit, it's 4 over its stamina level. They're also, that's -4. They are disordered, so that's -5, and they took hits from artillery, so that's another -1. So it's a whopping -6 from this roll. Haven't got a lot of hopes for them, to be honest. Let's see what happens. No, they're whipped, they're gone, and they'll be retiring. So back over to the hand-to-hand. So here we are then. This could be the decisive action of the battle. The Confederate cavalry have charged into the flank of that regiment there. If they can shake them or break them, then the game is going to be over. So the cavalry get 8 hand-to-hand dice, and because they charged in, they're getting +1 to their rolls, so basically they're hitting on 3s. Because the Union regiment is being charged to the flank or the rear, they're getting -1, so they're hitting on 5s. So they've got 6 dice for the Union, hitting on 5s, 8 for the Confederate, hitting on 3s. So we'll do the Confederate first. Just grab a handful of dice. Wow, that's a whopping 7 hits there. So that's a good start for the Confederates. Just take those out there, 7 hits. And for the Union, on 5s, just the 1. So there's just 1 hit there. So we'll do the saves now. So we've got 7 saves of 4 required for the Union. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 5 casualties. And then for the Confederates, no, nothing. So just looking at the results, obviously clearly the Confederates have won because they're also supported to their rear. So absolutely smashed through them. So that means they are shaken. And I mean, I'll do their break test anyway. But to be fair, that's the end of the game. But let's just quickly do that. So they're 2 over their stamina. Let's see if they would have broken. No, they would have held the ground, but as I say, they are shaken. So that is the end of the game. So I'll come back for a quick wrap up. So this is the scene at the end of the battle. Pretty much how I'm feeling. It's all over the place. My head's hurting after this battle report. Lots went on, lots to think about, lots of rules, lots of action all over the board. Really enjoyable scenario to play. I really like the dynamic of having these flanking units coming in. It really does add a different dynamic to the game. I mean, I played it as if I didn't know that was happening because I think that's what it would happen in real life. There wasn't, you wouldn't know these flanking attacks were occurring, so I didn't, stick a unit here to counter that coming in or over this edge either. Both commanders were just focused on trying to break each other's armies, and it ended up being slightly confusing, slightly regiments all over the place. We've got broken units, whipped units, there's disorder, this whole left flank of the Union retiring, and finally with that cavalry charge into the back of that unit there, breaking that brigade. That was the end of the battle. So I hope you enjoyed that. Only 4 turns, and that does show you in Black Powder you don't need to have massively long games. You can have some fun within a short space of time, and a lot can happen even on a 4x4 board using centimetres instead of inches as I do. Things happen quickly, things move around. Quite enjoyed using skirmishers for the first time as well. I think they were pretty decent in the middle there. So yeah, overall enjoyed the game. Hope you did too. If you like what you see, then perhaps click like. If you want to subscribe to the channel, please do. I've got another battle report on as well, and a couple of other videos, so I'll keep uploading. I've had some great comments. Thanks for all those who have subscribed so far, and catch you soon. Keep well. Thank you.